And then they said the most incredible words you can to a documentarian, which is, by the way, Liza just found 25 hours of never before seen footage from the 1970s. Are you interested in seeing it?
Today on Rainbow Country, Emmy-nominated producer Bruce David Klein joins me in conversation to talk about his latest film, Liza, a truly terrific, absolutely true story, a documentary about the legend, Liza Minnelli.
Hi, I'm writer Adam Smith, author of Deep Sniff, A History of Poppers and Queer Futures. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Gather around, I got a story to tell.
Tonys, a Grammy, an Emmy, even an Oscar. She has done it all.
She has achieved that rare status where only a first name is necessary.
One and only Liza.
Gotcha! You thought I didn't see you now, didn't you?
Born to Hollywood royalty.
Vincenti Minnelli.
Superstar Judy Garland.
I thought, Mama, she's never gonna pass.
Her fight was to find who she was. She didn't want to be a mother.
Her mother's passing was a catalyst.
A period of incubation.
She found friends and mentors who helped her.
He gave her an entire sense of self.
There was so much expected of her.
She had the thing that you can't teach.
She blossomed.
Everybody wanted to be with Liza. Everybody wanted her at their parties.
She's hot, she's sexy, she's weird, and she had that fierceness and so much vulnerability.
How you doing?
Terrific. Fine.
I feel wonderful about love.
Excuse me.
Because I wanted it to be like it was in the songs.
That last husband of hers, I was at the wedding. Oh, my God.
Legendary actress and singer Liza Minnelli has checked into rehab.
I was very worried.
How lucky I was to have gone through all of the bad stuff that I've gone through because it prepared me for the rest of my life.
If the public sees Liza as a barrel of sequins and glamour, they've got her wrong.
She wanted to consume the fullness of life. I don't think she has any regrets.
Bruce David Klein, hello, how are you?
I'm great. I'm feeling very Liza this week.
Are you? Because we're coming from, you are coming from a sleazy hotel room somewhere in what, Palm Beach?
We were in Palm Beach for a special event screening tonight, and then we open in New York tomorrow and in LA the following week. So this has been a whirlwind of Liza.
Well, I have to say, Bruce David Klein, thank you for being here. Especially to talk about your documentary, Liza, a truly terrific, absolutely true story. This is your documentary about Liza Minnelli, the one and only, the great living legend, Liza Minnelli. Let's just jump right in. You write, you produce, you direct this film. Let's go back to the very beginning, the heart, the spark that started this all off. Where does this come from? What's the genesis? What's the spark? What's the flashpoint that made you say, it's time for me to make this documentary on the legendary Liza Minnelli? What's the origins?
Sure. Looking back on it, it was actually pretty long in coming and pretty obvious that it was going to kind of come to this at some point. My first recollection of Liza was when I was too young to see Cabaret, but young enough to see the poster and say, my God, that is really naughty, and I really want to see that. So that was kind of the first instance. And then in 1980, I was old enough to see movies, and I saw Arthur. And I remember saying, oh my God, this Liza Minnelli is such an incredible comedic talent. You know, who is she? Oh my God, she was the one on the Cabaret poster. And so I started doing a deep dive into her at that time, you know, watching Cabaret and Sterile Cuckoo and her movies before that. And but what really happened to me, and it was actually a very moving moment in my life, very memorable, was in 2008. I went and saw Liza's at the Palace on Broadway. And you know, at that time, there was a very, very big question as to whether or not Liza could still sing. She had gone through some health issues. She had you know, gotten through the wild marriage, and there was a big question. And people were like, "Can she still sing? Can she still dance? And you know, can she still act? Can she still perform?" And I will never forget it. I mean, this was just a seminal moment in my kind of love of culture moment where, you know, they were hushed. Everybody was hushed in the audience. What would she look like? What would she do? And she came out, and the spotlight just shot on her. And she immediately did one of these kind of Liza, I'm not going to, you know, do Liza now, but a Liza hand hip kind of signature move. And the audience lost its mind in a way I've never seen before or after. I've seen all the greats perform, Frank Sinatra, David Bowie, Rolling Stones, everybody. I have never seen anything like this where people were, you know, as I say, not just giving her a standing ovation, but standing on the Broadway seats, and grown men and women with tears streaking down their cheeks. I mean, I had never seen anything like that. And I remembered at that moment, my God, this woman has a hold on people that goes way beyond, I like her music, way beyond, I like, you know, her movie, or I like her as an actress, I like her as a performer. This was something very profound and a very, very deep connection. So when we started talking to the Liza people at the behest of someone in our office, our co-producer Dana Craig, who worked with Alex Goldstein, our producer, and Dana said, "Oh my God, we have to put Liza on our list of prospective subjects." And when we started calling the Liza people, we were, you know, at the beginning feeling each other out. What are your credits? What have you done? You know, Liza does very few things, blah, blah, blah. And then they said the most incredible words you can to a documentarian, which is, you know, by the way, Liza just found 25 hours of never before seen footage from the 1970s. Are you interested in seeing it? You know, and I will never forget it. We got some selects in, we brought it in, we all kind of sat around and watched it. And I like to say there were people multi-generational, because everybody has a different memory or connection with Liza. I always say that some people think she's a great sitcom star because of Arrested Development. You know, some people know her as, oh, she did the cameo in Sex and the City. So when we hit play and we started watching the footage, it was so incredibly moving to see this explosive talent at her height. She was the Taylor Swift. She was the it girl of that era. And, you know, in the decades since, there were a lot of other things we think of Liza for. You know, she had toured with Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. She had some challenges with marriages and substance abuse. So to see her at her height, we said this has to be the core of a film. So we went back to them and kind of pitched this idea of using the 70s as this kind of era of, you know, how when Liza became Liza, which was actually the original title of the film. And they kind of connected at that moment and said, okay, we entrust this material and Liza's story to these people. So that's kind of the long-winded answer as to, but the truth of how everything came back. I'm not sure either could have happened, meaning had I just had that kind of emotional connection with Liza alone, without the Liza on the list, us calling Liza and then suddenly finding the footage wouldn't have happened, and vice versa. Had I just, reached out to Liza and we talked to them, but I hadn't had that kind of emotional connection, because me and Broadway have a kind of long, rich history. I produced a film called Best Worst Thing That Ever Could Have Happened, which was about Sondheim and Hal Prince's Merrily We Roll Along and the creation of it, and how it didn't do well at the beginning but became a cult classic. So I'm always kind of totally engaged by Broadway stories and big, over-the-top, juicy Broadway stories. And in many ways, there's no one bigger or more over-the-top or juicier than Liza's story.
Okay. So, quote, "Shut the fuck up," unquote. That's said by Liza Minnelli during your interview with her. The very
early in the film, it's almost the first thing she said.
The very opening of this documentary, essentially, it's a sort of behind the scenes setup. The very opening. Talk to me about why you chose to open the film the way that you did.
That's an interesting question, because when you make these things, I try to do the opening last, because I always feel if you cut the opening at the beginning and then you end up moving on and doing the other film, it often doesn't match, because the film that you make later on in the process is very different from the one that you started with the tease. So we had a lot of different versions, and there was a point that I looked at it and I said, who am I kidding? It's like, this is Liza fucking Minnelli. She has to open the film. I want to fade up on her and give a flavor instantly of her personality. And I have to tell you, that opening sequence is really the first time I interviewed her. And I think that kind of captures her personality in a way that sometimes you don't expect. She really is. She's that witty. She's that funny. She's that kooky. She's that off the cuff. And I think hopefully as you get into the film, you see some of the seeds that were planted kind of in her performance by some of her mentors like Kay Thompson and these people who literally, certainly Kay, more than anybody, gave her that kind of kooky perspective of life. And once you understand that, it makes sense that she would start the film. Okay, Liza, we're rolling. Shut the fuck up. That's essential, Liza.
Were you nervous during that first interview? How did you approach it?
That's a very interesting question. First of all, it's not a nerves. What it is, I've been doing this a long time, so not really nerves. What it is you feel a overriding sense of gratefulness that you've been given this opportunity. I mean, how many millions?
And you don't want to
people,
blow it.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to piss that person off.
How many millions of people? The pissing off doesn't bother me as much, because I've done films and I've pissed off the subjects, and that could be interesting also. But in Liza's case, I did feel the weight of all the people in the audience at the Palace who felt this enormous connection to this woman, to make sure that I told her story and that it was authentic. And of course, Liza is the greatest help along that, because she, and I tell the story, which still amazes me that this happened to me, which is after a day of filming, Liza asked for me to come back, have Bruce come back. And I went back in, and she was in her bedroom sitting on the edge of the bed. And I came in, I'm like, Liza, you called for me. And she reached up and she grabbed my hand and she started petting it. And she looked up at me with those kind of dark saucer eyes and said, please, Bruce, don't put in anything phony in the movie. Do not make me look like a phony. And that was one of the most incredible moments and incredible insights into Liza and her comfort with herself. Obviously, there have been times where she's glossed over things and kind of created the world as this old MGM musical of brightness and beauty and everything like that. But she wanted this to be real. And that was probably the thing that more than anything gave me kind of the backbone to be able to say, okay, we got to be truthful. Not that I wouldn't have been anyway, but that it was double down, and I felt more easily able to ask her about some things. Because at the beginning, when you sit across from somebody, let alone an icon, you're always dancing around. You're always trying to see, how far can I go? Will they talk about this? Will they talk about that? And with Liza, nothing was really, off the table, which was great.
I was just going to ask you, were there any things, any topics, any subjects off limit or maybe that you wanted specifically to talk about?
No, I mean, I think she was really happy. I think one of the things that really relaxed her was that we were very interested in her mentors. I'm not sure a ton of interviewers over the years has wanted to have a really long conversation with her about Charles Aznavour and what he did for her and why she thought he was so talented. So I think when I started tapping into things that she was interested in, I think that's when things started gelling very nicely. I think that, and I always say, if you want Liza to be your friend for life, you crack a joke and have her laugh. Because if she laughs once, she's your friend for life. She loves telling jokes. She loves having people around her who are funny. And I learned that pretty early on, that, keep the jokes coming.
The title, Liza, a truly terrific, absolutely true story. That's the full title. Is there a story behind choosing this specific title?
Well, it goes without question. We probably had a list of about over 100 titles. And there was a moment when I said, okay, when you have, so rarely I may add, a subject with a one name instant memory, Liza, everybody knows who you're talking about, that has to be the big title. So once that was kind of taken care of, it was like, okay, what could be the subtitle? And that was where we had 100 different variations. And I think ultimately I decided that it made the most sense to have a subtitle phrase that Liza herself actually said, words she actually said. So then it was a question of watching the movie, watching interviews, finding something that could be like a fun title. And when it connected with, her intro written by Fred Ebb to Ring Them Bells in the Liza with a Z concert, when she says, I have a truly terrific, absolutely true story. And when I told this, story to, my friends are songwriters, and they turned it. So I think it was essential Liza for a couple of reasons. One, it is so Liza, just the terminology, truly terrific, absolutely, that's very, very, very Liza. And I think the fact that she actually said it in an iconic moment in her early life was, made sense. And I don't know why, but I seem to be partial, I'm sorry to everybody, with long titles. Our Sondheim film was Best Worst Thing That Ever Could Have Happened. I don't know. Sometimes you just play with words and it worked out. But it feels like, and once we kind of did the poster and you saw the layout of how the title plays out, it's like, okay, this title is going to work. So we're very happy with it.
So, Bruce David Klein, you are an Emmy-nominated producer. In, I believe it was 1989, you started Atlas Media Corporation, your multi-award-winning production company. So here's my question for you. How did this all start for you? Did you start off as an actor, as a singer, as a dancer, as an instrumentalist? How did you get into the world of entertainment originally?
Uh, I was always a writer. I mean, first of all, I'll take that back. As a kid, I always made home movies, mostly horror movies, mostly of me killing my friends with blood splattering all over the place. So that was fun. But I was primarily for many years a writer, and I certainly got into entertainment in Broadway through studying writing, literature, and also lyric writing. Big fan of Stephen Sondheim, Frank Lesser, Fred Ebb. Just the genius of taking a soup and making a bouillon cube out of these lyrics where you have such a short period of time to kind of tell stories and evoke emotion. So that always fascinated me. So basically, I started Atlas Media as a vehicle for me to be able to write and produce, kind of whatever excited me at that moment. Of course, as the company grew, I got further and further away from actually physically writing myself because we hired writers, we hired producers to do things. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I started going much more back to my roots and started spending a lot more time doing kind of more personal projects that were important to me. So, as I said, I produced Best Worst Thing That Ever Could Have Happened. And I just did a film for HBO on the corporate raider billionaire Carl Icahn, and now Liza Minnelli. So these are things that just kind of really interest me. But my core interest has always been writing and storytelling. So that's kind of where it came from.
You've done a lot of work in television, in film. Do you have a preference as to which medium you work in?
I think it's funny because it's two sides of my personality. TV is fast, energetic, get it out there, get it, it's a little ephemeral sometimes, but get it out there. Film is slow and careful and thoughtful. And, the Liza film really from soup to nuts took 2.5 years to do. Whereas, we have done 13-part series for cable networks that, are done in 4 months. So those, in effect, I think there's a reason I do both, because those are the two sides of my personality. I have a kind of hyper side, wanting to do things fast, but then I like to think of a more thoughtful side where I like to kind of go in deep on things that interest me.
You've produced films that have been on network television, channels like TLC, the History Channel. You just mentioned HBO, the Food Network. For yourself, when you're creating content, for you, what makes good content?
Honestly, it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. It is a great story and a great character, and that's it. It's a great story and a great character. Obviously, there generally with a great character is conflict of some sort. In the case of Liza, certainly as part of our story, the conflict was, how was she ever going to get from out of her mother's shadow, her mother and father's shadow? How was she ever going to make a name? And it's not even making a name for herself. It's how is she going to express herself as an artist in a way that was unique and different from her mother and her father? I find that story fascinating. I find it fascinating because, first of all, how many children of superstars, and Judy Garland was a superstar, and certainly for many years the superstar, plus her father, obviously Vincent Minnelli, is a genius. The MGM look that we know of, the MGM musical look, is so reliant on his vision. And to think of those two, and Liza having to overcome all of the expectations. We went back and watched a lot of footage of interviews with her, with journalists from the 70s, and every question was, will you ever be as good a singer as your mother? Will you ever be as good a dancer as your mother? Do you really have movie star looks? Would your father have ever hired you? I mean, it's just incredible. And, we have a scene in the film where, a French male, I may add, journalist asked her, what do you say to people who say you're ugly? Which is like, it's almost comedy. I mean, people in the theater when they watch it are like aghast. I laugh out loud because to me, you're looking at Liza. She's like 25, 24. She's gorgeous, and her eyes are like, glittering with just excitement and this kind of fizzy, bubbly energy. And this guy's asking, how does it feel like to be ugly? It's just unbelievable. These expectations on Liza Minnelli from such an early age made the fact that she was privileged, which she was born on third base. She had absolutely, Hollywood royalty as her family, parents, and yet she was able to get from third base to home in a way that in some ways was harder than for many other people rounding all the bases, because they don't have those expectations, terrible expectations, the black cloud following her. And I think, I just say, how many children of mega celebrities, stars, talented stars like Judy and Vincent, how many of their children in Hollywood have a, halfway, amazing career as Liza? How many have attained the status of their parents, let alone in some eyes exceeded it in some ways? How many can you count? Not many. And I think that's that kind of conflict of great personality, Liza, great story, how Liza became Liza. And obviously it helps that, she's a damn good singer. So, worst case scenario, you get into, a corner, you just let her sing and brings down the house every time.
In researching her life, especially with the 25 hours of newly found footage that you had access to, did you come across anything that even surprised you when you were researching Liza Minnelli?
Well, the two things that surprised me about Liza as we made this film was this idea of privilege for her being a double-edged sword, and because of the expectations, how hard it was for her to kind of make a name for herself. That was a kind of eye-opener as we delved into it. And the other thing that was very kind of inspirational in a way was the lesson that you could almost take out of Liza's life about the power of mentors to kind of transform us. And I think a lot of us keep people who can help us, mentors, at kind of an arm's length, and they don't let them in. And as a result, they may not go as far or may not develop their talent as much as it could be if they kind of let these, mentors into their life. So I think one of the surprising things is seeing how important her mentors were to her, how much they helped transform her and focus her enormous talent. And also kind of a lesson to all of us that, open yourself up to mentors and you're probably going to be a better, more talented, more successful person.
I just have a handful of minutes left with you. Here's my last question for you. And you make an incredibly entertaining and insightful documentary telling Liza Minnelli's story. Star-studded. You've got George Hamilton. You've got Mia Farrow, Ben Vereen, the late, great Chita Rivera, just to name 4 legends. My last question for you, what do you hope audiences come away with after they've experienced Liza?
That's a good question. I think that for me, I'm always looking at pleasing 2 audiences and having them both take away something. I think for core Judy and Liza fans, I want them to take away a profound understanding of how Liza became Liza, how important her mother was to that equation, but how important it was for Liza to spread her wings and kind of go forth. And quite frankly, the other side of the equation, people who may not know that much about Liza, I want them to take away, my God, I thought she was a sitcom star, and she is one fucking mega talented woman. And it sounds crazy, but I mean, as we produced the film, we would often talk to people of different ages, and we'd say like, do you know who Liza's mother is? And we were shocked. I'm saying 50, maybe 40% of the people who are, let's say, under 35 did not know Judy Garland was Liza's mother. So I think that being able to explain who Liza was and show how remarkable she was and tell this story of mentorship and the importance of it, I think if people get half of that when they watch the film, I will be very, very happy. And hopefully, as a lot of the reviewers have said, which is maybe the highest compliment, is as soon as I finished the movie, I watched Cabaret. That in some way is one of the greatest reviews you can get.
Just on an aside, from the UK, there was in 2023 there was a 5 CD box set of like 80s gay dance floor hits that was released. One of those tracks was "Don't Drop Bombs."
Okay.
Liza Minnelli and Pet Shop Boys.
I thought you were going to do "Losing My Mind," Pet Shop Boys.
No, they chose that particular song.
Interesting.
Yes.
Funny. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, I'm going to have to, defend the film against people who are saying, why didn't you put in the Pet Shop Boys and Liza? But unfortunately, that, as well as many other storylines, just couldn't fit in once we kind of honed this film
Absolutely.
to tell the story of her mentors.
Absolutely. I have to say, Bruce David Klein, well said, well done, well made. An absolutely excellent, excellent film. Well done. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Go see the movie. We want fannies and seats to experience Liza, and nothing like it seeing her on the big screen. She's just incredible.
Gather around, I got a story to tell.
Tonys, a Grammy, an Emmy, even an Oscar. She has done it all.
She has achieved that rare status where only a first name is necessary.
The one and only Liza.
Gotcha! You thought I didn't see you now, didn't you?
Born to Hollywood royalty.
Syndicated Manelli.
Superstar Judy Garland.
I thought, Mama, she's never going to pass.
Her fight was to find who she was. She didn't want to be a mother.
Her mother's passing was a catalyst.
A period of incubation.
She found friends and mentors who helped her.
He gave her an entire sense of self.
There was so much expected of her.
She had the thing that you can't teach.
She blossomed.
Everybody wanted to be with Liza. Everybody wanted her at their parties.
She's hot, she's sexy, she's weird, and she had that fierceness and so much vulnerability.
How you doing?
Terrific. Fine.
I feel wonderful about love
Excuse me.
because I wanted it to be like it was in the songs.
That last husband of hers, I was at the wedding. Oh my God.
Legendary actress and singer Liza Minnelli has checked into rehab.
I was very worried.
How lucky I was to have gone through all of the bad stuff that I've gone through because it prepared me for the rest of my life.
If the public sees Liza as a barrel of sequins and glamour, they've got her wrong.
She wanted to consume the fullness of life. I don't think she has any regrets.